Hello and welcome. It's Black Friday, so I'm going to show you some of my favourite plugins that I can't do without. I am lucky enough to get all the Waves plugins with the page that I run for them. I get a lot of their plugins and have everything. I'm going to show you some of the ones I can't do without. These ones I bought myself as well, so that I can use them on multiple computers as well as the other ones. So I sort of have two licenses. And this is some of my, literally nearly every track you will find one of these in there, or being used somewhere around the process of making stuff for the track. So it could be a lot more than I'm going to show you, because there is some severely good plugins, but it's well worth going to check out the deals that are on around this time of year. And yeah, just stock up and get your plugins now, because you really do save some money with software around these times. So this one of my favorites. We're going to look at some EQs first, and then we'll go through some compressors and some other bits and pieces. So this is the API 560. Absolutely love this EQ. The output here is a soft clipper. So you use this on whatever you want, but I really like it for drums. You've got some EQs that work the lower you push them. So if you're just pushing it a little bit, it'll be quite curved. As you go higher up, it notches more and more and becomes more of a notchy EQ. They're set frequencies obviously, but really good, really helpful for drums. Like, you can poke through some frequencies, really get the fundamentals going. Great for cutting as well. Nice sound to it. And with EQ, quite often you alter the peak level, and so with the soft clipper on the output here, you can really have a play around with the EQ and not worry about your peak level being taken over, because there's a soft clipper that deals with it. So that's one of them. Another one, great favourite of mine. This is the RS56 Abbey Roads EMI. So this is duo mode, MS mode and stereo mode. Love that. Quite often use this in stereo mode. When you put it to stereo mode, so if you look at stereo there, you can monitor it in mono, you can monitor the left, monitor the right, monitor the stereo. That's really useful. In duo mode, your output becomes your left and your right, and you can individually do your outputs. And in MS, the outputs become mid and side, and you can monitor your sides, monitor your mid, and monitor your mono and stereo. So really handy tool. I quite like this for just pushing up the sides. I do a lot of sort of side sound design, I suppose you'd call it, with this. I like it on the master as well. A little bit of sort of EQ curve on the master. Setting that I'd often do would be taking down the sides of the low, and then I'd give maybe a little bump in the low mids of the sides, and then the very top of the sides I'd take down a little bit again. I would then bump up the mids of the tops to sort of compensate for that. Now, it's one of my favourite things. This sort of gives you more direct low bass, then it gives you a bit of interest and information in the side, a bit of a bump in the sides, in the low mids and the mids, and then the tops, the sides roll off and it's more focused in the mono. So this really helps your mix work in mono, and just gives you a nice curve. It's one of my favorite things to do with that. Another EQ, real favorite of mine, the HEQ. It's got a graphic behind it, an analyzer, so you can see the frequencies. You've got a lot of different modes here, so you can choose from the different vintage and modern and digital, UK and US. One of my favourite features of this is the analog mode, and you can get the harmonic distortion, pump it up, and the level and pump it up. You can really get some thump with that. It's quite interesting to play around with. So lovely modelled sort of analog EQ, but can be digital as well. Very interesting and precise EQ, but with that sort of tonal character as well if you want it. So we've got the F6 here. If you haven't got a dynamic equalizer, then you need one. Very handy, brilliant for all sorts of things. Mix corrections, sibilants. You can use these ducking vocals. You can use these side chaining. You're kicking your bass, pads and bass, whatever you want. Really get intricate. You've got side chain features. You've got threshold. It's a dynamic EQ, so it's sort of working. Again, you can have it working against stuff that's side chaining into it, or you can have it just sort of acting when a loud peak comes. So say for example you've got a peak at 1k here, you set up the threshold of number 4, the attack and the release, so that you get that right. The gain, you kind of leave that unless you want gain there. But say you had a peak that you just wanted to duck down, so quite often you might want to give a little boost in an area, but there's a peak that comes along every now and again. So you've given the boost, and then what you'll do is you'll get the range and you'll get the threshold. You'll set the frequency to where you want it and the cue of how tight you want it, and you'd work with that till the threshold started to activate, and it would duck just when those frequencies were too loud. So very handy tool. So rather than EQing the whole thing, you're just acting when you need to with this. Very, very handy and useful for lots of things. So we're going to go on to some enhancing type stuff, I suppose you would call it. We have the R bass here, very similar to max bass. Max bass is like this. It's got another little feature, which is a compressor, which is nice. That both of these are good. This is great for getting some added harmonics that will come through on smaller speakers. So if you've got a sub bassy tune or a sub bassy stem track, as it were, you can beef it up with this in a nice, interesting way to add harmonics in the higher ranges, so it's more audible. Another one which is working the other way, adding harmonics in the lower ranges. This is low air, very, very nice tool this. If you've got a weak kick that you have to use, get this on it and it will beef it up. The low section here adds an octave under sub in harmonic with it. You've got an align, so you can align the phase of them. This one is for your actual sort of signal, and you choose the range here. So it goes up to 120 hertz. You can use this, I mean, I love it on kicks and bass and various things. You can use this on pads and guitars, but even vocals. Sometimes you can get interesting things happening with this. It's worth playing around with and seeing what frequencies you can catch when it's on high. For other things, if you want some thickening and depth to your stuff. So another compressor we're going to go into here. Now, I like this one because of the low level, giving you a sort of expansion. Basically, if you don't want to, reduce those highs and smash the highs, bringing up the lows, you can just bring up the quiet bits and not sort of bring down the tops. So that's very handy. Quite often doing both. Love it on vocals and various other things. Really good for sort of getting something to sit in the mix nice if you're having a problem with it. Very handy compressor. Another favourite compressor of mine from Waves is the H compressor, hybrid. H standing for hybrid. You've got the analog here, make it noisy if you want, or turn that off. I would say with a lot of these sort of analog models, these noise generators add up. So if you've got lots of them on in your plugins, you need to go through and turn them off, because you'll be building up noise upon noise upon noise, and you don't want that. You probably just want it once. So this is a beautiful compressor. Love it because of the punch feature. Attack letting the transient through. You've got an added one here with punch, and it gives you more control over your sort of dynamic range of your drums when you're compressing things. Great for keeping your peaks and poking things out if you want. And also, having it off, it works lovely as a sort of quick compressor, as it were. So you can also sync your release to the BPM. Love that. I've always done that for years. Sit there with a calculator. I think this is the first compressor I've seen do it, so really happy with that, and like it. Use this compressor an awful lot when I'm compressing. Another one I use, bit of a channel strip really, but the compressor on here is the hardest smashing compressor I've ever heard. I quite like putting 808s through this and just banging them, and you really get that pingy punchy sort of 808 from back in the jungle days that you like, or that I like. So another thing worth mentioning, this is some modelling sort of desks, really, modelling channel strips. So this is the bus one that I've loaded, and you can load the channel ones as well. You can control the channel ones through this bus one. So that's why I've loaded this, to show how this one can be the master control for the other ones. So you add these individuals, you can add these different model desks on all your tracks, and it's like going through, I think we've got a Neve, an EMI, and I can't recall the other one. I'll have to go and have a look. Lovely little thing is the Waves manuals, user guide comes up, and then there you go. You can check everything you want to know about the plugin. Very, very handy. So they're modelled off 3 great engineers that Waves have gone to and said, we like the sound of your stuff, we like the sound of your desk, and we want to model it. So you've got the drive feature here, which gives you a bit of nice harmonics distortion, and that's the same on all of them, and it's the different character. And as you load the individuals, they've actually modelled every single channel of the desk, so you can go to the individuals and load the actual channels, so channel 1 on 1 and 2 on 2 and 3 on 3, and the, you know, the analog imperfections of those desks over the years are put into this plugin. So some really deep design's gone into this, and between these 3 engineers you're talking a lot of hits, a lot of really well produced music that has stood the test of time and has stood many different playback varieties, a radio club, concert, you name it, people's kitchen, at work, you name it, it's there. So next one we're going to go on to, keeping on the sort of like harmonic sound of things, we're going to go into the tapes. This is probably my favourite tape from Waves. There is others. I do like the J37 as well. That's great for some features, but this one I find myself going to more, so I really like it. You got the record level and the playback level linked there. You want to be looking for hitting an input of around about -3, you know, peaking at 0 or what have you, ducking down to -5 or so. That'll be hitting it so that, you know, you're hitting the VU meters sort of nicely modelled how it has been. And if you want to hit it harder, you can go undo these links. Well, so actually keep the links on because they're working correct for that. Smash the record level, you'll see the playback come back down. That will be adding a lot of harmonic content. Also the flux is like a compression and adds a lot of harmonics distortion to it. Wow, and the flutter can get it old school. Quite often I take that off, to be fair, unless I'm making samples and I want it. You've got noise you can introduce, and then here you've got the filter section, delay section and the filter for the delay section, and over here you've got the bias and the speed. The lower sort of speed here will be older sounding, a bit more bass heavy, but a bit sort of losing the tops, and the 15 and over will give you a bit of a crisper higher end, not quite so focused in the bass. And it's a beautiful sounding thing. Love it, absolutely love it. One of my go-to tapes, that's for sure. Another interesting thing from Waves is the Abbey Road vinyl. If you haven't checked this out, do so. It's got a lovely sound, can really sound quite good on your mix sometimes. Some of the settings, one of them, I can't quite recall which one of them here gives a real bump, so it's an interesting sound, really nice, but I'd just say watch it if you're putting this on individuals or on a master. You kind of got to be careful with that bump, but there's some interesting settings, and it really does glue things quite well. You can put the original desk EQ on or off. You can choose the lacquers, printing or a dub plate sort of thing. You can have the turntables, the DJ style, or the lathe style, and you've got the different cartridges as well, which is really nice, and you can notice the difference with them as well. You've got a drive feature here, really gain it up. That's a crusty old drive, that one. You've got wow and flutter as well. You've got noise, crackle, density and clicks, so you really make it sound quite analog, this, and vinyl like. And you've got phase distortion. Phase distortion is really interesting, quite like that on hats. It's just that old school vinyl sound that you get to the top end when they you know, distorted it because everyone had too much top end in there. The tone arm goes through and, like, literally modelled. It will get duller as you go through, as it gets towards the end. Love it. And the air modulation feature for the phase distortion, brilliant. So love this. It also has the play and stop feature, which literally is the best vinyl stop sound you will ever get. Great effect, great tool. Now onto delays. H delay, another one with the H. I definitely recommend the H collection. It's very nice. This one has a few features. Lo-fi feature, it has a modulation feature if you want to get spinny on your pitches. It has ping pong on and off. Obviously you can host it, BPM it or millisecond it. You've got a high pass and low pass filter for the feedback, for the tails as it were. Dry and wet. output level and analog again if you want that bit of noise, or if you've already got that, you want it off. Feedback on this, you can really get going. Really interesting delay. The sound out of this is great. All sorts of effects and sounds can be generated from this. Literally one of my go-to delays. Another one, which is an old school one and is sometimes overlooked, I think, by people, is the Super Tap. Now this is a very useful design tool for sound design, for delay. It's worth just playing around with it, going into it, setting up the different settings, turning them all on, setting your levels, setting your pan. If you have a look when I turn them all on, you can see them all come on, spreading the delays around the stereo image there. You've got the feedback down here, you've got the tap feedback on, and you can really get going with that. It's interesting, it's really interesting. And you've got the quarters, 16th, etc. down there. These are all filters, so you can turn all them on and choose which filter you want. So you can get interesting with this. If you spend a little time doing some design, you can get some delays that will be quite unique to you out of a tool which has been around for a long time. Great little tool for delays. I couldn't recommend it enough. Another sort of great one for delays and effects is the guitar stuff. Always using guitar things. Don't want to overlook, even if you don't play guitar, don't want to overlook guitars and guitar effects for sound design and mashing stuff. These are really good. You've got full of presets. You can flick through your presets and you know, different things will come and load and what have you, and different units, and you can go through and set them all yourself and choose which ones you want. It really is a unique way of creating your own delays, your own effects, your own sound designed beauty. You know, I couldn't rate guitar stuff enough. Now we're going to go on to some reverbs. Favourite reverb, Abbey Road. This thing is just lovely. I've got my desk on, feeding the input in there. Don't worry about that. So this one has quite a few nice different things going on. You've got the different plate selectors. I think one of them's valve, and there's a couple of other things if you want to read about it. Come up to the question mark and have a look. This is sort of length, but they're also different. Like each time you do one, it's kind of not just length, it's a different reverb sound. You've got your bass cut here to roll off the bass reverb, your treble there to boost or cut that. Pre-delay is over here. You've got your drive here, you've got your analog making it a bit noisy, and you've got your dry and your wet. This is a powerful reverb. You've got the crosstalk as well, which is really interesting, and you know, great sort of effect if you want to make it sound old school. So this is, you know, a must, I would say. The sound of it is big. The sound of it is nice and beautiful and lush, and yeah, it's not a subtle reverb. It's a nice, big, noticeable reverb. I love it. Use it on a lot of things. Okay, what other reverbs? If we're going to have a look at the Abbey Roads, I think we should have a look at the H reverb as well. Pull this up. Now, the H reverb is probably one of my favourite go-to reverbs for when I need to design reverbs, you know, off the cuff just now. You know, right, I'm going to design a quick reverb. It does have quite a lot of nice added sort of sections where you can get quite creative with it. But I quite like the sound of it. Often I have a lot of those things off, and I just design the reverb on this small page here at the front. However I want it. Early reflection, tail, dry, wet, output, reverb time. You've got the different sort of early reflection selector of what type of early reflection it will be, and yeah, pre-delay, build up, and size. So really, really nice, intricate reverb that sounds beautiful. Sorry, my email's going off in the background there. So we like that one. And next we're going to go on to this little tool. I really do like this. Now this is a harmonic exciter. It's the Aphex Vintage Exciter. It's modelled on something that was quite old. I think it was the 60s originally it was designed. They pulled it out again. I've done a few things on this telling you before on videos, but they've pulled it out again. Beatles, I think, were the ones guilty of doing it. Loved it. Started to use it on individuals, used it on tracks. The producers liked this thing so much, they named it as they credited it as almost as a player in some of the stuff. Now I have this sort of set. That's my default setting, how it comes on. You've got the various settings here, so this is sort of depending on whether you're using it as an insert or a send. You know, again, little arrow in there will give you to the manual, and you can read all about it and find how you use it. Input, output, and the amount. Now I use this just a touch. I just put it on like 2 or 3. It gives a little bit of brightness, but it is a bit of magic. I can do a mix and I can think, you know, this sounds nice, lovely, lovely mix. When I put this on, I usually actually work into this, but I've done it where I've done a mix and I'm liking it, and I just think, oh, it needs a little bit of top, so try EQ. Don't know, sort of ruining it a little bit. You put this on, now this will give you that tops, that little bit of sheen and brightness you're looking for, without like the sound or the phase effects of EQ, or at least I don't hear it. But it also gives like a lock. It gives some sort of, it's subtle, you know, this is like producer here, most people wouldn't hear this, but to me it gives a subtle clarity to your mix. It just goes on and all of a sudden there's a slight bit more definition in your mix. You've got that top brightness, but it's almost like you can hear individual things better. And so I use this a lot on the master. I use it a lot on individuals if I want as well, and you know, I'm not feeling EQ and I just want a bit of presence. So really useful tool, lovely on vocals, instruments, all sorts of things. Highly recommend it. Another one I'm going to mention, I'm not going to go on about absolutely all my favourite Waves plugins because there is stacks of them, but another one I'm going to mention is this. Don't always use this as the final way of doing this, but this is a very useful tool for just checking the pitch of things. So for tuning and say pitching drums, you know, playing around with the pitch of things, you just want to quickly hear what something sounds like in a different pitch. Just put this on it and mess around with it. Sometimes it's left on, sometimes I might even leave it on and do pitch rises on the snare. I might have a snare roll or something, or kick roll, and automate that going up. You know, you do affect the transient a little bit with it. I would say if you're doing that sort of thing, have it in this mode, transient mode. You've got different modes: smooth, sync, punch, and transient. I've found for doing the rolls, transient to be the best. For other things, vocals and stuff, smooth is quite good. Pad smooth is good, etc. So yeah, it all depends on the source material, but again, useful tool. It's really nice to just be able to quickly pitch things and hear what they're sounding like in different ranges. So on to the keeping on the pitch sort of vibe, as it were, we'll mention Waves Tune. Now they have a live one of these, a light one of these, and this one, the Tune. There's lots of other ones. I think Cubase has its own, you know, auto tune, obviously. There's lots of these about these days. I really like this one. I like it for its sound and its simplicity. When you put it on an audio channel, as soon as the audio comes in, it will auto scan and it will just start scanning, and then you've got it and you can look at it and you can play around with them. I always sort of select all, and then if I want to, you know, share it out, I want to pitch it and make sure it's like absolutely perfect, you put the milliseconds down, the speed right down, the milliseconds of the note transition, and the pitch correction on full. That will put it out to a synth, you know, make a voice a synth almost. If you just want subtle correction, then be more subtle with these things. You can see the micro tuning, and you can watch, you know, if you've got good screen and you can see what's going on with the audio waveform, you will see what's happening with these, and you can see the movement and what it's doing to the micro tuning. So it's well worth having to play with. So many vocals are slightly out of tune. So many vocals benefit from a little bit of tuning. So many vocals benefit creatively from just playing around with them and changing the key. So it's worth playing with. It's worth trying. It's great for creating harmonies, you know, all sorts of things. If you haven't got a sort of vocal tuner analyzer, you need one, I'd say. You can't really deal with vocals without them. So that's a great tool, and we're going to wrap up with one more, and that is the Smack Attack Transient Shaper. This is relatively new from Waves, and I like it. One of the features that I use on this quite frequently is the clip. So if you put this on your output and put it onto clip, it will lock off and digitally brick wall clip your output. You don't, it will give no sound effect or anything. You put it down to dry if you want, so you're not getting it, you know, nothing on here. And it's just useful if you're having to keep things at certain levels and watch your peaks, and you just want to cut it off. The clipping it, you know, as long as you're not audibly distorting it, clipping it is one of the best ways of doing it. You know, the other way is saturating, tube saturation, but that gives a specific sound. So if you've already got something that's quite saturated and you don't want it more saturated, but you need to control its peaks, clipping is a better way of doing it. And clipping is a good way of controlling the peaks of drums as well. I like both saturation and clipping, and then you can really get some loud stuff with dealable peaks, as it were. So yeah, great tool. Attack, sensitivity, sustain sensitivity. Sorry, I'm not running anything through it, but I'm just sort of showing you. The attack feature is this one. You can do the time of the attack and the curve of the attack. The sustain is here with the curve and the time. The output is there. You've got limit option, clip option, or off. You know, limit is a limiter. You can hear it limiting when it starts pumping. And the clip, yeah, like I say, it's a very handy tool. Just using it on its own if you need to control peaks. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up with that. I could carry on for a long time, but it's I've got things to do. I've got places to go. We're going to go to Amsterdam this weekend. So it's Black Friday. Best time of year to buy it. That's all I would say. Well worth going to have a look. Check it out, get a few things, and get creating. Happy producing. See you soon.
The music shall echo for all time.